Hey, what's up, everybody? This game is between Hikaru Nakamura with the white pieces and Grandmaster Teimour Radjabov with the black pieces. We're coming from round four of the Fide Grand Prix tournament going on right now. It's a wonderful game. Again, Nakamura white pieces, Radjabov black pieces. Okay, this should be a slugfest because these two players are natural fighters. Play sharp, both play sharp openings. So here we have this knight c6. So we don't know if Radjabov is going for some type of accelerated dragon type position. Maybe a Shreshnikov, which is more up his alley. And a lot of people don't like going into those sharp positions. You know, they can be very double edged. So popular line nowadays is Bishop B5, just steering the game into more positional waters. All right, not giving White any big advantage, but it doesn't give Black the kind of game that he's aiming for, especially if he wants to play something as sharp as the Sveshnikov variation. E6, castles, knight G E7. This avoids the double pawn situation after bishop takes C6. Also prepares D5, D4, C takes D4, knight takes D4, and now the knight bounces to G6 again. Now the other purpose of that move is that this knight goes from E7 to G6, keeps an eye on E5 after this knight disappears. Bishop E3, Bishop E7. The bishop returns after fulfilling its temporary obligation on B5. Now it comes back, and the bishop is in a great position and actually has improved itself. Castles. Knight comes out. Queen C7. And now F4. Knight takes. Queen takes. And B6. It's a common simplifying procedure is to play knight takes C6 and then knight C6 takes D4 and then either bring this bishop light square bishop out to C6 or in this case B7. Sometimes this pawn will be here already on D6 and then the bishop will be here and then knight takes D4, queen takes D4 and then the bishop will come here exerting pressure on the E pawn. So you have the same idea here. Okay, the side with less space wants to trade some pieces in order to relieve the cramp somewhat. So here, White doesn't have a big advantage, but White does have a slight advantage. It's domination of the center, and he has more space. All right, and space is mostly on the king side, and therefore his game, will tend to, or his attack will tend to be on the king side. He also has this pawn on D7 that's weak for Black, and White will also concentrate his play on the D file against that pawn moving forward. And if White can, he would love to play E5 and keep that pawn permanently weakened. So now the queen drops back, avoiding further trade of minor pieces after a forced trade of minor pieces after this move. Bishop B6. I'm sorry, Bishop C5. Okay, so now Bishop B7. Rook D8. So we see the focus on this pawn, especially after the bishop has moved to B7. Bishop comes to C6. A3. Bishop to F6. Nakamura plays G3. Rook AC8. And now E5. Bishop goes back to E7. And now we see things starting to get a little serious in White's camp. In Black's camp. As his pieces are being pushed back, and so he has to find some type of active plan soon, or just risk being squeezed positionally here. H4, now it's going after the knight to drive the knight back. Rook FD8, H5, so now the knight is driven back. But Radjabov hopes to just force this push through with this pawn. However, the bishop moves once again, the light square bishop, and attacks the rook on C8. So Radjabov has to move the rook. He really has no compensation if he just gives up the exchange. And now, this is a fantastic idea by Nakamura. Notice how everything is so cramped up. There's no squares, right? The bishop has everything covered here. This pawn is covering this square. So Nakamura comes up with a fantastic concept, because if given a chance, Radjabov would just simply push this pawn and liberate his position. You know, he'll just push it here and then trade off on E5, and then White's position will come under some pressure. All right, let's say after a move like Queen E2, play could continue D6, E takes D6, Rook takes D6, and maybe Knight B5. This will force the bishop pair to be traded. Okay. But black is doing all right here. Only bad piece really is this knight. But black should be okay in this position. White has a bishop here. Okay, but black has good piece coordination. Like again, I said his only problem piece really is this knight, and White's kingside pawns look a bit overextended. So when you put everything together, black's pawn structure is a bit more solid. His king is a little safer. He has, his rooks doubled up on the D file, compared with the, the space advantage that White has, and his two bishops, and also the bad knight on F8. The game is pretty much equal at this point. This explains Nakamura's next move. Nakamura just simply wanted to prevent the D pawn from moving at all costs and play Queen D6. And this is based on the simple fact that the queen on C7 is attacked and has nowhere to go. So the queen is checkmated for all intents and purposes. The queen, Radjabov can't even move one of his rooks to C8, right? So he wouldn't have to exchange. There's absolutely nothing he could do. He's actually forced to make an exchange, whether he exchanges, queen takes D6 or he plays bishop takes D6. He's forced to exchange here. And this is symptomatic, ladies and gentlemen, of having a super cramped position. Okay, now he's forced to exchange, but doesn't mean he's losing or anything like that. That's a different story. Bishop takes D6, E takes D6. Again, queen has to take. I'm sorry, he actually decides not to take there, and instead plays Queen C8. This will actually be losing. Rook takes Rook takes D6. All right, it's down a piece. So Queen C8. This forces bishop takes C8 and keeps the material equal. So bishop takes C8. Rook B takes C8. And now, what is black gonna do about this pawn on D6 that's cramping the position? Because the problem is this pawn is killing this rook here, and it's killing this knight. So Radjabov needs to take some measures to, get rid of this pawn, or somehow try to play around the pawn. A4 by Nakamura. H6. And Radjabov can play his knight to H7. Yeah, H7 and then come out to F6. All right. And then perhaps even in the dream world, have a setup where this rook is on C6 and knight here on E8 and try to win this pawn. But it seems a bit far-fetched at this point. Okay. So rook A1. So now Nakamura is wanting to open up the A file for his rook. So the bishop drops back. A8. A5. And there it is. So there's one part of it. So perhaps Radjabov has this in mind, this maneuver. But again, it seems a little far-fetched to me because it's easy for White to protect. And White has a dark square bishop. So who knows? Perhaps a setup where the knight is on E8 and F6 is played, and this forces this bishop to have to be over here somewhere. Perhaps in a scenario like that, can Black win the pawn? But White has to be, to me, extremely careless to lose that pawn. Rook FD1, B5. So Radjabov opts to keep the position closed. A6. So now this pawn is fixed on this square right here. If bishop takes A7, then Radjabov can play B4 and pick up the C2 pawn. So here, after after A6, B4, the knight comes to B5, rook takes C2, and Nakamura plays rook D2, rook DC8, and this is his idea. So he again restricts the black pieces. Force the exchange, and notice how he just leaves this A7 pawn. He can get it later. Again, attacking the pawn. He takes the pawn, and now the dangerous pass pawn. Nakamura has won another pawn, and for all intents and purposes, he's pretty much winning this game. Of course, Naka was threatening to take as part of his threat, and also playing rook b6 also with just a simple idea of rook b8. Rook a6, and so he moves the bishop. Like if he did something else, like let's make like it's a strange move, then rook takes c6 is possible. D takes c6, and then you play a slick move like d7. So, and there's nothing that black can do to stop both pawns. This is why the bishop moves to e4. It's rook b8. So there was like two drops of poison in the position. One was rook takes c6, and other, as I said, rook b8, and then just go in here. Radja's still trying to hold on, but at this point he's dead lost. Nakamura missed a stronger move and just playing knight a6 here. And for example, knight f6, and then knight c5, bishop c6, and knight b5. Knight b7. The idea, as you see, is just to block any sacrificial opportunities. Go back. But he played bishop d2, which is okay. Knight f6. and his idea now is just to race the other pawn up the board. And this was enough. Radjabov resigned. Okay, there's no way he could stop this pawn. So great, great positional game played by Nakamura. And it's a good example to show the downside of having a cramped position. Um, and great job from Nakamura exploiting that weak square on d6. It definitely this move queen d6 was a nice concept. Just putting this bind on a position. So because it's easy to see that you're getting the piece back, but just the he had to see further and understand further, you know, about the position in order to understand how deadly the bind was gonna be. Because it wasn't like he was sacrificing his queen and wasn't gonna get it back, but he understood the effect that the ensuing bind was gonna have on the position, and that's where I tip my hat off to Nakamura for exercising real good judgment here, because these pieces are just terrible, and then the time it takes to unravel, that time was used effectively by Nakamura to create threats against the queen side, while Radjabov was trying to figure out how to untangle the mess he was in. So good game. So I hope you enjoyed that. Hope you learned something. I'll see you on the next video.